Hey everyone, welcome to another Mammoth Monthly where we break down our bit of our adventures and show the minis and that sort of thing. We're going to try to make it nice and short, but also informative so that you know how to run this adventure. And with that, Daniel, please take it away.
High above a boiling sea floats an immense storm-capped fortress. From this vantage, the Dragon Emperor Cyraxathon wages a war of conquest against all he surveys, directing his draconic generals from a throne of white fire. To put an end to his reign, the characters must sail the blistering waters and infiltrate his stronghold. But on their way their resolve will be tested, for not all is as it seems, and there are maddening secrets locked away in the Dragon Lord's Bastion of Flame.
Bum, bum, bum. So hello, I'm Dav and Daniel. We're both two out of three
Hey
owners
there.
of Mammoth Factory. Daniel's the head writer, and I write with him. We playtest everything. It's fun. So, Bastion of Flame. Bastion of Flame is our third chapter in the Immortal Flame book campaign. Um, 3 out of 4 chapters.
hmm
Each chapter is a good 4 to 6 shot adventure kind of thing, and it builds up into a campaign. You level up every, 2 to 4 sessions or so. Um, Very fun campaign. We playtested it, had a lot of fun. So in this chapter, you start by but again, you can also play this completely as a one shot because all our adventures are designed to be either standalone or sorry, not one shot, 4 to 6 shot. So they can be either a standalone adventure or a campaign, right? So in Bastion of Flame, the main premise is that there is war, like Daniel said, and you're in the final stage of the war where Saraxathon, the great dragon emperor, has taken over Fort Magar, which is this floating fortress on top of a boiling sea. And the history of what is this sea and why is it boiling, and why is there a floating fortress and how all of that is, that's all in the lore, and you can read more about that. But that's not going to be, we're not going to discuss that today. Um, so you are traveling there and you're trying to get to now, this fortress is hidden, right? It's hidden amongst a deadly area that has a lot of floating islands and has a lot of this kind of blue smoke and vapor that's coming from the boiling sea. So it's hard to find. So you need to go somewhere to someone who knows where it is. And luckily, you have a contact in the World's Edge Tavern. So as you approach the tavern, um, it's a very kind of you know, tavern at the edge of the world. It's on a big cliff. The sea breeze feels weirdly warm, even though it's a cold night. And as you approach there, you meet the tavern owner, and there's a tattoo artist that does magical tattoos and all this kind of stuff. And there's this weird blue moss on the building. And you get there and you meet your contact, and your contact gives you some information about Fort Magar because you were supposed to meet the person you were supposed to attack the fortress with, but they went ahead without you because you took too long or whatever plot reasons, right? So instead, they left you a note of the information and a bit of a map about the fortress and the contact and what they're trying to do. So what they're trying to do is get into the fortress and potentially sway one of the generals, not the general, not the emperor, but one of the smaller dragons, a young dragon, a storm dragon called Etherion, to join you and backstab his emperor. Luckily for you, you're also traveling at this point. So throughout the whole campaign, you're traveling with a dragon that starts as an egg and grows to a wormling. Is it called wormling?
Wormling, yeah.
Wormling, and then a young dragon, and then an yeah, and basically at this point it's a young dragon. So you have a big, strong, magic breaking young dragon as a little assistant. This just to show you how yeah, underpowered you are at this level 8 to fight. And is it an adult dragon or agent dragon? It's an agent dragon,
Ancient,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So you need all the help you can get to take this guy down. So anyway, you get this information. You get on this kind of steampunky boat called the Surfing Kettle. And on the surfing kettle, it's this kind of, it works on the hot sea, right? Because you're traveling on the boiling sea. So it kind of uses the energy of the boiling sea to travel. It's made out of metal and it has all these gears and stuff. And you're traveling. And as you're traveling, there are these cyclones of like hot water that kind of hit the boat and it throws you overboard and you can take fire damage from water. It's very funny and terrible and scary. And as you make your way, you kind of see up in the distance, you start to see the floating islands of the boiling sea. And there's like 100 feet that you need to get there. And yes, you have a dragon, but there's all these cyclones and stuff. So it's a big challenge and you need to use a bunch of resources to get to the first island, right? Because it's hard to get there. Because also the sea, as you're approaching the floating islands, the reason they're floating is because the sea actually goes down. So as the sea is going down, because it's actually going to go over the edge to nothingness, that's why the islands are floating. They're not actually high. It's just the sea is going down. So to get to the first island, you need to kind of get up. It's a really challenging, weird kind of whoa, what's happening? A really cool visual as well. Um, and you get to the first island, and these islands are connected by these old magical rope bridges that were connecting between them. And the reason what's holding them aloft is this kind of you remember that moss from earlier on the tavern? So now it's these kind of like vines, these blue magical vines that are holding the whole thing. And if you burn all of them, maybe the islands collapse. I didn't think about that. Maybe they can just they could technically do that.
Hey.
Um, but you know, it's wet root, so I'm guessing it's
Hmm.
pretty hard to do and it's magical. So yeah, less of a problem. Anyway, you're traveling there. You also get this mission that you can eat this. There's a specific type of seed in the vines that you can eat, and then it gives you like zero gravity, all these kind of cool effects. At some point, you're noticed or not by like a patrol unit. Again, remember, you're like high in the sky. There are all these cyclones going around. There's this kind of blue mist and vapor. So it's kind of, and there's these boulders. So you're kind of, you can stay hidden if you're careful and you're smart about it. But they have these wyvern patrol riders that are what's riding the wyverns are the Drakari, the Dragonborn Empire, um, Dragonborn, Dragonkin. Uh,
Sure.
yeah.
Let's go with that.
Um, and they have these exploding spears, and they throw these spears, and it blasts you off. And there's this whole mechanic of the cyclones throwing you back up, so you don't just instant death, right? But it's a really challenging encounter on its own because the wyverns are smart and they have these maneuvers that protect the riders and all this kind of stuff. Very, very cool encounter. Even though you have a young dragon, wyverns are quite nasty. They deal a lot of damage. So that's a cool encounter. And then you are about to reach one of the back entrances of the fortress. I mean, everything is kind of back entrance into a big, massive floating fortress, but this is the entrance that people don't expect you to come with because there's like a big floating bridge that comes from somewhere, but they destroyed that bridge, and there's other pathways that don't go through the storm, right? That are more likely for if somebody would invade, it probably would they would come from there. Nobody expects people to go through a crazy boiling sea storm, right? But so you do come from there because that's like the back entrance. So you need to, and there's like, you know, 20 wyverns flying atop of this fortress. So if you get noticed, it's real bad and you would die. The characters would die. So the characters need to be smart about it. And they can't just make a big noise. They can't do anything too flashy, and they need to get from the last floating island to the fortress. It's very cool. Um, yeah, and with that, Daniel, please take over and explain a little about the fortress.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Fort Magar, right, is it's kind of like a castle on top of an egg, right? If the egg was made out of solid stone, right? Like a piece of mountain that has like the rest of it has just crumbled right down into the abyss below, and there's this big chunk of stone just hanging there, right? So a lot of the fortress is inside this huge like stone like a slab, right? Um, so the level that the characters can get onto is the lowest one, and it's like the bottom of this kind of big slab of stone, and it's where all these kind of caves run through, right? And this part of these fortress is actually like it's just like caves, right? There's no structure in that area, right? And it's threaded through, just like the islands on the outside. A lot of it is threaded through with this like um, this kind of viney, rooty stuff that has this weird anti-gravity effect around it, right? So there are rooms in the area where you kind of you have like less gravity, or you float a little bit, right? Or you have to kind of pull at your surroundings to move around. And there's kind of like two major things in this section. The first is that there are kind of signs all over the place that the so during this adventure, you're actually following after another character, right? This kind of this alchemist slash artificer guy who is kind of your main contact, who you met if you were playing the campaign earlier on in the campaign. And if you're just doing it as a one shot, he's kind of like just somebody who you're trying to find, right? Um, and there are kind of signs that his group have already sort of like seen some fighting in the area. Like there's one or two that are kind of dead around there. There's like this, their armor is smashed up.
Some
Um,
fighting. Yeah.
yeah, seeing some fighting, right? And it looks like it hasn't gone too well for them, right? So, and then there are two main things on this level. So one, there is this big room that is like covered in all this mossy stuff, and this is where Etherion has his kind of lair. So Etherion is a um a really classic dragon, right? He likes living in caves. He likes taking people's stuff and keeping it and staring at it and going, "Oh, I love this thing," right? So he has like a hoard. He has all his like he has like magical items kind of like stuck in the walls in this kind of root, all this like rooty stuff, right? Um, and so he is somebody that the players will want to like speak to, right? Because they kind of know they're looking for this kind of younger dragon who is sort of an upstart, right? And he can be negotiated with. So he met their original contact, this artificer guy who's come in, and he was not impressed with him. He didn't feel like this guy could win against Cyraxathon, the Dragon Emperor, right? He just thought, this isn't worth my time. I'm just gonna like defeat you and like capture you and send you up to my granddad or whatever he is, right? Um, but once you guys arrive, right,
Hmm.
you have a dragon with you, and this guy respects dragons. So he thinks like, oh, maybe me and this guy and these people, maybe we could do it. Maybe we could take maybe we could take out Grandpa. Um, and so you can kind of barter with him, right? He's very sort of like he's a little slimy. He's a little kind of like duplicitous and kind of ambitious. And also he is the son of a character that the player characters have met before. So Arionazar, the dragon that the players fought and maybe killed in a previous adventure.
Very likely
The
killed.
very likely killed, right? Yeah, um, is his dad. So there's a kind of catch-22 thing going on here, right? So like this guy will be wanting to test the characters and find out why they're worthy, figure out if they can like
Hmm.
do what he needs them to do. And obviously one of the things the characters would want to say is like, yeah, we've killed a dragon before, baby. We've done
Yeah.
this,
And if
right?
they say which dragon
And if
they
they say
killed,
which dragon, he's going to be like, oh,
oh nah, you
oh,
did.
no, no, this is personal now,
Yeah.
right? And if it comes to combat, he's kind of a coward, right? So he like he darts around. So he's like this kind of storm lightning dragon, right? So he's very fast. He kind of uses all the different caves around to kind of zip through and hide and like fly around and if possible escape, right? Like he won't fight to the death. He's not that kind of character. Um, so then also on this level there is a prison chamber, which is where one of the companions of the kind of artificer guy that the characters were kind of are chasing after, right, are going after, uh, is captured and is being like interrogated by a ascendant, so a dragonkin, right, who
Very
has
good.
walked into this like purifying flame type thing and come out really swollen with wings, basically, right? Um, and this guy's like a spellcaster, he's basically like a big cleric, right? Um, and how the players interact with that can change in a few ways, right? It's an anti-gravity room, so like there's a lot of like jumping around in there. Um, there's uh, there's like the option to kind of sneak through. There's the option to just kind of listen in on it. You can try and kind of rescue the guy and figure out what he knows, all sorts of stuff. The guy interrogating him is pretty important because he's the players might need him for later.
Yeah,
We'll just say that, right?
yeah,
So then there are two other levels, right, that are relevant to the players in Fort Magar, right? There's the kind of middle level above this, which is basically the kind of main, um, let's say, dungeon area of the adventure, right? It's the area that where players will be sneaking around and trying to like avoid being seen by guards. There's a lot of like weird little traps and secret compartments. There's a whole section where there's like all this contraband, like magical contraband locked away, full of like unique items that allow players to do kind of really weird stuff, right? So players are very much encouraged in this section to really kind of explore and sneak around, look for secret entryways.
avoid
There are
the
multiple
guards.
avoid the
Yeah,
guards, yeah. There are multiple ways up to the final level, which is this kind of temple area above, right? And some ways require that you, for example, have a living Drakari to like put their hand on like a I mean, it's kind of like a bioscanner, kind of, but like a
no,
magical bioscanner,
it's
right?
a door.
It's a door, a magical door that opens if
Enchantment.
you put,
Yes.
yeah. But obviously, if they go full murder hobo and they kill everyone, that's not an option. They have to find like a secret way through. There's a lot of stuff on that level. Um,
Hmm.
so then the final level is this big kind of ovoid kind of chamber, which is it was like a church for the kind of human empire that owned this place before, and it's being converted into a temple of the immortal flame, right? This kind of cosmic sort of power that the Drakari worship. And once the characters get in there, they would not immediately. They're expecting to find, the Dragon Emperor there, and what they see immediately are like a bunch of monks, basically not like kung fu monks,
Priests.
priests, right,
Yeah.
right, acolytes, priests who are kind of like working in the area. They're cleaning up. They're doing a bunch of actually like manual labor, where because whole place is being converted. They also see this big kind of pillar of white fire in the center, this kind of incarnation of the immortal flame. That's the centerpiece of the whole section. Um, and so one of these priests, is Cyraxathon. He's hanging out in human form, right? Because he's a very kind of
Just
like
chilling.
he's just chilling, and he's doing like manual labor and working on this stuff with these guys, right? Because he's kind of he's a with the people type kind of guy, right? So how the characters interact with this whole section is something he'll be observing, right? And he's got a chance to kind of prod and poke them and figure out why they're there. And there can be this sort of interesting exchange where this guy's trying to figure out like what these guys are, right? What are they doing? What's happening here? Um, and eventually, uh, I mean, it's likely to come down to a fight for most players, I think, right? And he will transform into his full kind of draconic form. And how this works, right, is during the first part of this fight, this dragon, he doesn't really treat the characters as that important, right?
He
He
doesn't
sort of
think they're a
plays with them.
threat. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't think they're a threat, right? Uh, but the characters have with them this tar dragon, right? So tar is like this anti-magic substance, right? And if they have been able to throughout the adventure, they can pull these like shards of this kind of crystal substance off its back, right?
They can also
And
find some in the lab in the
they can also
second
find
floor,
some.
and
Yeah,
there's a bunch of
absolutely.
ways to get it. Yeah.
And what this stuff does is, so this stuff is like highly anti-magical. It's super poisonous, right? And when you stab it into this guy, it basically deals like a whole ton of damage, and his stat block goes like all his numbers
Yeah,
go
we have
down.
a whole chart
Basically, yeah, we
for it.
have like a
Yeah.
multi-stage chart for like how many these things you have stabbed into him, right? So he goes from like hitting on like was it like a plus 18 or something to like at the very
No,
bottom
much
it's like a
higher.
plus. Is it
I think
higher?
way higher, I
Oh,
think.
really? Okay.
I don't remember. Yeah.
But he goes down to like hitting on like a plus 8, I think, at the end if you have like four of the or three in him,
Yeah,
right?
and he can't use his
Um,
fire breath at
yeah,
all
his
at the
fire breath
end,
gets
and his
goes yeah,
AC goes down,
his
his
damage
saving
goes
throws go
down,
down.
all of it, right? And basically the first time the players do that, right, and it's not easy, it's a contested athletics, right? So just remember you have a dragon with you in this fight, so
Yeah.
you're not that like
Or two, if you're smart.
or two possibly if you get Ethereum on your side, you can have another young dragon with you. Um, and so this shard, once you get into him, that's when he starts taking the players relatively seriously, right? He starts to use like his legendary actions more effectively. He starts to use he has a like a mythic action where he uses the flame in the center to like create walls of fire between it and these braziers that are kind of
We're going to
around
show the map so we
the
can.
map.
Yeah.
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 So the and these things basically cut the map into pieces, right? So it just creates these zones of fire where people can't really move around, but he obviously can fly over them all, right? Um, it's concentration, so if the characters ever make him like fail a concentration, they all
We
go
don't need
away.
to.
But
We don't need to go too much
go
detail. We're
into
kind
the
of over
super deck.
time
Yeah.
already, so
Are we?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
But
So
yeah, that's the final fight of the whole campaign. And there
yeah,
is a there's a bunch of twists for how that can end. It can just end in a negotiation. You can talk to him. We'll see how many players do that. Like,
yeah. Players like
they like
like
having a
fighting
big fight.
dragons, but you
Yeah,
never know. You never know.
yeah,
And the one main plot twist would be that when he does die, your dragon, because he slightly loses his mind when uh, basically he sees a highly magical creature like as a corpse, he wants to eat it. And if you let him eat it, then he becomes a much bigger problem
yeah.
because he
For
properly loses
context,
his mind.
this is like a mutant anti-magic
Yeah,
abomination dragon, right?
that's more like a
Crazy Eyes the
campaign thing.
dragon.
Yeah. So it becomes a very, very tricky opponent, which is that would be the end of the campaign, like optional
Secret
and a
boss,
different, yeah, a
right?
different
You
optional
gotta kill your
additional
dog.
problem. Yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
kill the baby dragon you've raised throughout the whole campaign, and he's now the BBAG. It's all your fault. Anyway, that's Bastion of Flame. It's really hard. It's really great. The players had a lot of fun playing it. The boss fight is one of the coolest boss fights we've designed.
Yeah, really enjoyable.
And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. And have a good one. Rampage on.
See you around, people.